Interview, we've got these sections. We've got something about your personal background, something about your music, something about music education and you being an educator, and your lifestyle, and a little bit about your equipment and the gear that you use. Yeah. Where were you born?
I was born in Birmingham, in England, a long time ago. But I moved to Exeter when I was quite young, so I grew up in a town called Exeter, which was a small city in the southwest of England.
What was the music scene like in that hometown when you grew up, in terms of what was the mainstream people listen to? Was it, Oasis? What was that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all my friends at school were just listening to, I was... I don't know, stuff like that. I don't know how, it depends how old, all the relevant pop music for their time. But I had musical parents, classical musical parents, so they exposed me to some classical music when I was young. And also my older brothers and sisters, they would like the Beatles and the Police, better bands, like good bands, and I would kind of follow what my brother liked. And so that's what music I was listening to when I was younger. When I was very young, but I was exposed to jazz and some classical music when I was very young, just from my family.
All right. And did you seek any lessons since the very early age? Like, was it the first natural thing to do? Let's take a lesson. I want to play an instrument, or did you get the instrument first? You tried to figure it out by yourself and then seek the help.
Yeah, this is a good question. So what happened? I can tell you what happened. I played violin and piano like classically very badly, and my parents got me school lessons and stuff like that, just the basic stuff. So I was doing that, but basically what got me into the bass was this guy, my brother was into the band called Level 42, and that guy played electric bass, so I wanted to play electric bass, and I convinced my parents to get me an electric bass. I think I must have been about 10, I don't know, maybe younger, maybe a bit older. And then I used to just go and just learn all the bass lines in my bedroom. And so my parents saw that I was kind of obsessive with that, so they were very encouraging. So what happened, and they didn't really know what to do because they were classical musicians. They were like, so they tried to seek out some people in the area, but they ended up going to this bass player in, my parents were really sweet. They went up to this bass player in London, Dill Katz, who was kind of in the scene there, and so I went to him and I played for him, and Dill Katz just sent me away with a list of records to buy that I should have, just stuff, and it was stuff like Miles Davis and Weather Report and stuff, because I was playing electric. It was stuff with Marcus Miller, stuff with Jack Oak and stuff. So then I started listening to that music. I bought like 5 vinyl albums, and then really got into that and got into Jacob Pastorius and Weather Report, and that's just from my parents just sending me in the right direction. So that was what I was doing, and I was just in the basement just playing, learning those bass lines and just playing along to those records. Fusion, more fusion, jazz. And then shall I go on? I could tell you. And then I went at school when I was a bit older, when I was maybe 13 onwards. I had a really good teacher. He was a guitar player, but he was into jazz, and he was into sort of more the fusion side of jazz, but he knew so much music. So he would make me these tapes all the time of all these musicians that I should be checking out, and it was all fusion orientated. It was all those kind of 80s fusion guys, lots of Michael Brecker, but stuff that wasn't really easy to find in that town, or people who like that sort of music. So I was into those guys, and then the Chicory Electric Band, and that, stuff involving the electric band. So that teacher, he was called Dave Bone. He was great because he was passionate, and he taught me a lot, from the and then so that was that. And then I if you want me to go on.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, absolutely.
I had one other guy who was actually who I played in. This is when I was a teenager, maybe 15, 16. Who I played in a fusion kind of covers band with. This great. He's a piano player who was very much in like an Oscar Peterson type piano player. So he was always trying to get me to play double bass. And because he knew all the standards and he knew all the substitutions, and so I was just playing electric. So he was another kind of older mentor, another mentor who kind of, was kind of made me aware of that other world of acoustic bass and playing standards, and that. So he was important too. And I used to just play we just played jazz funk with a local band. And that was fun. We played Chicken, stuff like that. So. Those two guys, and then my parents is the biggest influence, and my older brother's taste in music. So I had the discipline of learning violin classically. Just understanding that there was discipline involved in scales and stuff that you need to do. So when I teach my students, or when I think about it, young kids, I just it's finding that obsession with the discipline. It's very hard to get, to get to a good level. Anyway, so that's my upbringing.
Would you say that when you started practicing double bass or electric bass first, right?
Yeah.
When you started practicing, you were thinking, oh, music has these elements. It has got rhythm, right? It has got the harmony. It has got a melody. And did you practice these things separately, or did you just learn one song and apply it as a universal thing?
I like this song. I was like, what? I listened to Teen Town. I was like, what the fuck is this? And, I just never heard anything like it, and it was interested me. And it was John Scofield's stuff, Blue Matter, and that stuff. And all just blew me away. I mean, I think maybe it was the virtuosity of the playing, and so I just wanted to play along to records. That's what I wanted to do. So I did have some help with it. I did have some transcriptions of something, but I would really just try and learn a lot of the stuff just from, by ear, and just playing along to the record, and I did a lot of that. And a lot of that stuff I didn't think about, and I heard in the wrong place, I heard in the wrong beat, and I would just not know what I was doing, but I was getting my technique together. I didn't put that together then, definitely. No, not very kind of structured. Well, I think that's important if you just do something for fun and you lock yourselves in the basement and you just, do what kids do now with computer games, just.
So what would you say was the most important moment or person or an event in your music education?
It's hard to pinpoint. There's definitely one thing that happened just after I left when I was 23. After I left university. But before that, it was just I didn't play. I got into music school on electric bass, so I had to learn upright bass. I didn't learn upright bass until I was 19. And what really convinced me to learn was the guys in the year above me at the Royal Academy in London. They were all really good, like straight ahead jazz players, and really good. And that really inspired me. Those guys inspired me, and they everyone was trying to get me to play sort of swing. I was playing electric. I was into fusion. I was like, what am I doing? This is not. I need to deal with the acoustic bass, and I need to learn the tradition because I don't have any foundation. So guys in the year above were inspiring because they were just good players, and they took pride in learning the tradition, and they were good. So they inspired me to pick up the double bass. So I really started practicing the double bass when I started university at college when I was like 19. Yes. So I gave up the electric basically in my second year, and just really focused on getting the upright together because it's such a different animal, So I would say those guys really influenced my direction, and I can tell you who was in that year. It was like Gareth Loughrane, Tom Corley, Steve Fishwick, Matt Fishwick.
Wait a second. You know Steve Fishwick?
Yeah.
And his brother? Oh, this is awesome. He was playing with us just 8 months ago. He was over in Dublin.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was at school with those guys, so. And me and Tom Corley became really close and played together. So so that's, they were great. Gareth Loughrane was super talented and writing all this music. And they had a band that I sort of played in every now and then. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely switched to a lot of acoustic jazz. Once I hung out with those guys. Yeah. But at the school, didn't really inspire me or anything. But that's what the school was for meeting people like that.
Are there any textbooks that you think should be in collection of every student or music teacher, bass related? Any books that you think, you need to have it in your repertoire of instructional material?
Yeah, I mean, I think this day and age is different. I'm just researching that because I'm actually trying to write a book, my own.
A method, fantastic, yeah.
Because instructional lesson, but I'm going to write it as an ebook or something. So I've been researching this. These days and age, I haven't checked them out, but it looks amazing. You see, like Christian McBride has a thing on the Open Music Studio, and it has chapters, and it's him talking about stuff, and it has chapters on everything. It looks amazing. I mean, if I'd had that when I was younger and learning, I would have, because I was a big Christian McBride fan when I was young. I was like, wow, this is what I would have done. But and I think Patitucci has one. Everyone has something now, and then I have something on my music master class, which is a smaller thing.
But I use my master class actually a lot. I think
I know because Lag is on that a lot.
Lag is there, Nir is there. I checked you out there. It's Mike Moreno is there.
Yeah. People doing it. Yeah, that guy's got a lot of good people there. Yeah. But I mean, I didn't have YouTube or anything. I just had my vinyl and I used to get videotapes with black and white videos of Marcus Miller and anyway. I think for the bass, the Simandl bass method, Volume 1 is being instrumental. The Simandl bass method is a classical book, but it's so great and methodical for just getting basic positions. I always recommend that to my students. And then I don't know. I just researched the Rufus Reed book. I think that looks amazing. I just looked at it. It looks great. Rufus Reed, and then I had a few revelations after I left school. I changed my technique a bit, and there were some things that forced me to change, but there weren't methods or anything. So I won't talk about that. So.
What does inspire you to learn more about music and innovate its elements?
All that, part of being in New York, part of my reason for being in New York was to be inspired by all the musicians around me, and to motivate myself when on moments of being a bit complacent or a bit lazy or whatever, which I was getting a bit in London. So I moved to New York, so I wanted to be around all this energy. And there's so many great musicians; it's always inspiring. It's scary too, but it's inspiring. So that's where I get motivation from to create. I listen to I was checking out other people's music and just seeing what they're doing, and also just from the musicians I play with. Generally, all the musicians I play with are of such high quality. It's it's really inspiring. I have my own band that I occasionally play, and that's great because I get to do what I want and direct these musicians in the way I want to. So that's fulfilling. So I think the good thing about jazz and that world is that it's you're creating, you're improvising. Even if you're playing more traditional structures or whatever, sometimes you're still creating and improvising. So I like the fact that's kind of why I play.
What about your biggest collaborations that influenced you the most? I'm sure that you're very proud of all of them, but if you were to point maybe 2 or 3 collaborations with musicians that you really enjoyed playing with,
now on and off over the years, I played a lot with Jeff 10 Watts, and he was a guy I looked up to and I wanted to play with. Actually, I wanted to play with Marsalis, and Jeff was in the band, and so I did play with Branford a few times. I subbed for it, so I did that, and then I formed a closer relationship with Jeff because I'm on his last few albums, and I play with him on and off, and so that's been great for me. I mean, even though we didn't grow up together playing, but that's been hugely inspiring for me because he's just such an amazing force on the drums and jazz in general. Other than that, I mean, when I was in London, I loved playing with. I had my peers. I loved playing with my friend Tom Corley. But then when I moved to New York, and I did play with a lot of great musicians in England who helped me too. I haven't mentioned who were sort of mentors as well, like Jason Ravello and Julian Joseph and people like that. But then I moved to New York, and then I moved to New York at the same time as Largay. So I guess me and Largay have kind of grown together in New York. And so we don't play together a lot now, but we have done over the years, and that's kind of it's a cool thing. I like that, I definitely think when we play together, duo or without drums in small settings, we have a real connection that other musicians don't have.
I like your project with Will Vinson and Laga. It's fantastic music.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons. Yeah, it's good because it kind of it's an intimate thing. I like not having the drums kind of have to be there. We're actually going to record soon, actually, another album, so that's good stuff.
Have you already picked a studio you would like to use in New York for recording this album?
Well, with the studio for the record label's New Bell Records, and they have a studio, so they do everything.
All right, they take care of it.
But with the Altria stuff before, we were very lucky to have this guy Jimmy Katz who was into us, and we would find a great room with great acoustics and record it. Like the first album, I don't know if you know, the first album is done in a church, abandoned church.
Yeah, I heard it in a church, yeah.
And we just like, oh, what are we going to play? Or let's just play, a few tunes. And then I had the idea of like, I wanted to play free between playing standards, because I wanted just to get playing free. And that was good. That's a good idea. I just wanted those elements of playing free as like palette cleansers, and then just playing standards, or So it was a while ago now, but that was vital. But the sound was really important. So having Jimmy Katz record us in these nice rooms, and there's a lot of unreleased stuff too. We haven't done anything with. But yeah, that band is fun. But it's never really taken off because we have never really had. Focused our attention on it. We've been doing other projects, and we haven't got management, finding us the right venues. So it's tricky. A lot of places want drums too.
Yeah. Well, your album, Romantic Funk. Could you tell me what was the process of A, composing it, and also B, what was the time frame when you put it together? If you were in a studio, what did you do on day 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the time frame was for you?
Okay, so Romantic Funk it was like the antidote to the Al Trio. It was like I wanted to do more electric. I wanted to play more electric bass and have something more rain than just like in your face.
Yep.
So it's kind of introspective and jazzy and non-committal. So I can tell you, I booked. I wanted to do it right. I booked. I played gigs over the course of maybe a year and a half with the material.
All right.
With different guys. So I got a lot of different guys played the music, and it really helped me hear how it sounded. So I sort of fixed things after I record a gig and listen back and fix it. It's 55 bar or little bars in Brooklyn. Not big gigs. A ton of people played the music, like really good people. And then I ended up. So that was a good thing to do, really. So really sort of. So then I decided I wanted Pete Rendy to, who's he's a great piano player, but he's just a sound engineer, and he really knows what he's doing. He's pretty old school. He likes tape and vintage gear. So I knew from the start that I wanted him to record it for me. So, because I'm not super on top of that stuff, and I didn't want to have to worry about that element. But I knew I wanted it to sound good because there's so many albums that just sound terrible, jazz albums especially, and jazz albums they sounded good, but then post production they just ruin everything. They compress everything or do something silly. So so I knew that was in place. So then I did a pledge music campaign to try and get the money because I didn't have any money to get kid, and so that was a big thing for me to that was a different thing. That's a big thing for me to kind of deal with because didn't like putting myself out there. Anyway, whatever. I managed to raise enough funds through that to get into the studio. But 2 days in the studio. I got the band, and the guys were great. I still wasn't sure of the musicians. There's so many great musicians anyway, but they were great, and I got the band, booked them for 2 days, just 2 days in the studio, and we went in there, and then I found a studio. Brooklyn Recording was a studio that Pete Rendy recommended, and I played there. Been there before. They have a great Neve board, and and so it was expensive. It was definitely expensive, but so we went.
What was the name of the studio?
Brooklyn Recording. Brooklyn Recording.
And is it Brooklyn Acoustic Studio? Is it the same thing?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe, but there's a ton of albums recorded there. Everyone's recorded there, so it might be Brooklyn. Yeah, it's just Brooklyn Recording, and so yeah, I mean, we just went in there, and I had a couple of guests on the album. I wanted Sullivan Faulkner, who's incredible, came in and just played on one track, and yeah, I mean, it was definitely a learning experience. Like any recording, it's hard to like get everything in place until you've actually just done it. And
how did you approach? What were you doing on the day one and on day two? How did you lay it out?
Well, I think due to people's schedule, because Will was on the tracks, I just did that. I got the difficult tunes out of the way on the first day, and started with I mean, it was tough because it took ages for them to get the sound together, and then like usual, and then the next day that I had to get Sullivan came in and Will came in on the second day to play on one tune each, and we did some tunes to click, and we did most of it without, but one or two to click, and then I had so that's basically it. The 2 days and 2. Then I had another drummer come and play on the track, and which I did at home in actually GarageBand. Then I had a track, and then Pete put it into Pro Tools, and then we messed around with it. And then Lenny, this hip hop drummer, came in to the same studio like a few months later and just laid down some drums on it. So that was kind of more of a modern manufactured track. So that's that. And then there was a lot of post production too. There was a lot of, and there was overdubs, synths. Pete has a great synth, so he did a lot of stuff overdubbing.
And when you were mastering, right, what were you listening up for? What kind of sound do you like and hear in your head when you're listening to, let's say, different levels of instruments, and what do you like?
Well, when I was mixing with Pete, we decided it wasn't recorded to tape, but it was mixed to tape. So that was more. I wanted that warm sound, and I wanted it to blend, So that's what we came up with. I wanted it. I mean, because it was a different project, I wanted it more bottom heavy than a jazz. And so, typical Ari is not really a pop. Ari Honig's not really doesn't have that sound. He's a jazz drummer, so we sort of were like filling with ways to make it fuller and stuff. And that's also because I didn't really know what I really wanted. Anyway, so Pete's got amazing ears. He's a musician, so he did like the mixing, and I would just say that sounds good. Then Nate Wood to master it. I just gave it to Nate, but I wasn't even there. I just sent it to him.
Oh, okay.
Great, Nate's super. Nate Wood is like the guy, another amazing musician.
What is his name?
Nate Wood.
Nate Wood. Okay.
Yeah, the drummer, and he sings and he does everything. But he has his mastering business from home, and he's incredible. He's an incredible musician. So having Pete and Nate involved with those two aspects was easy. I mean, it was easy because I trust them. They're a great musician. I trust them with everything. So Nate, actually, having said that though, Nate, because it was a instrumental album, he didn't master it because it was still a jazz and instrumental album. He didn't want to master it as loud as they master a lot of more pop music, because you compress the sound more and then whatever. But in hindsight, I wouldn't mind it being a bit louder, So that's one thing, You can turn it up, now these days with like playlists and blah blah blah. People that hear your track slightly quieter, it's like, oh, that's slightly. Anyway, that's all I have to really say about that process. Yeah.
Now, as a bass player, how do you like setting up yourself on the stage? Drums, in consideration with your ears and communication. Do you have like a special routine that you do yourself, or they just go, Orlando, you stay here, done? Or is there something?
Yeah, it's generally always the same. I mean, I don't do too many gigs with my own bands, like in bigger, different places. But it's generally the closer the better. The drums usually on the left, so I like to have the amp on my left. If I'm using an amp, and then it's closer to the drums, so they hear it from the amp. I'd love I change my setup depending on the situation. If it's acoustic piano trio, sometimes I just have a mic and a monitor, no amplifier. But then if the guitars and it's louder, then I have an amp. So I change my setup, a lot. But generally, I like being close to everyone. And I have a monitor. I don't really have anything in it because I can hear everything. Bass is good, it's pretty good. So that's that for the bigger stages. Yeah, definitely close, as close as possible. And I have certain gear that I like. So
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say are the characteristics that define a good musician, a good bass player? So what
characteristics to define a good bass player?
Yeah.
Do you mean as a player or as a person, as a player?
As a player. But also as a person, because you have to be professional, working professional, right? So maybe you could mention both, please.
Well, now you have to be. This is a good question because if you want to be a good jazz bass player or whatever, sideman bass player, you have to have a lot of skills. I mean, if you're a Jack of Pastoros and you think, you might have your own career, that's a different thing. So, you've got to figure out what you want to do. Maybe you're a soloist and you have your own band, then you'll be a superstar, whatever or not. But if you want to be a guy who wants to play with other people and be a good sideman, then obviously you have to have, as a bass player, you have to have upright bass player, you have to have all the fundamentals really strong. The sound, intonation, time, all the basics, but really strong. Ears, just all that obvious stuff. You have to be nice person, you just have to be just a good person, show up on time, all those sort of things. Especially really, you can't, especially in New York, you can't really afford to be any other way because there's so many other good musicians. So if you really let yourself down by not calling someone back, or forgetting a gig, or showing up late, too often, that's not. It doesn't last long unless you're a superstar. But but yeah, those are good, time, years, basic stuff. I mean, really time. If it's jazz, good walking bass lines, great walking bass lines, good time, sound, pocket, soloing is like the last thing, but if you can solo, that's cool. And that's that's it. Sort of.
Who do you like, or who inspired your walking bass lines?
There's Israel Crosby, Ray Brown, Chambers, Juan Carter, those guys, Jimmy Garrison. Yeah, so those guys. It's walking bass is the hardest thing to do well in jazz. I think it's the hardest thing, and it's a real art to get together. It took me years before I was really comfortable and that I could really improvise and play nice lines and put that to rest as But that's walking bass is.
What are the common mistakes and false assumptions that students make, in your opinion?
Like students, well, a lot of bass students just don't work on their sound. It's like they think they're playing jazz, so they don't have to. They can, blah blah blah. But no, you practice playing with your fingers like you pits like you're playing with the bow. Like classical player plays countless hours trying to get the bowing together. You do the same thing. So a lot of bass students just don't really get that together, And the same with time. They don't get their time together. They don't have a pocket themselves without the drums, Things like that they just overlook or might blame on other musicians around them, drums, rather than just getting their shit together, on their own. So those things, and when you're young, it's a difficult one. You're more dogmatic, and it's good to be passionate about styles, certain things, and get into something and be really focused on that, which I was definitely. But you've got to be open-minded too. You've got to let other. A lot of young people just talk a lot of shit. They have a lot of idealistic views about things just so they can pigeonhole things and make sense of everything. And sometimes that's good because then they get to a point. Sometimes they're closing off a lot of other music. So I feel that. But that's the young people, younger people.
Because there's a lot of pressures from outside, competition, and then you ask yourself, am I good enough for something? It's your own expectations versus how the other people see you. Do you cope well with this kind of pressure? And are there any tips or your own attitude, when you see somebody playing better than you, how to approach it?
Yeah, it's tough. Everyone likes to, give the impression that stuff doesn't bother them, but it does. I go from moments with seeing people that I really like. I go from moments thinking, wow, they're great. That's so amazing. I'm inspired by them to like, shit, fuck, I need to get that shit. He's got all the gigs and he's much better than me, blah, blah, blah. We all go through that stuff. I tell you what something that helped me process that information a bit better was when I started having a band of my own, and then I saw my own thought processes for choosing musicians, and then to realize that, oh wow, it's like, oh, I understand it. Don't take anything personally. People have so many reasons for picking certain musicians they pick, and it can be to do with being their big friends. They grew up together. That he plays a tiny different bit away, but so when I started thinking about that, I understood that it's music too is subjective, so don't take anything personally. So that definitely helped my thought process. And obviously, social media doesn't always help because you see everything on social media and it's like you're thinking about it, and sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's like, So I definitely I've been lucky where I've had some good confidence boosting comments from certain people, like Branford, Marsalis, or someone just giving me like a little bump at the right time and making me feel like I was I had something. But it is very difficult, and I am a bit, and I can be, I just it can be tough. I don't know what else to say, but you've got to kind of embrace it too and take the challenge and just understand that you're playing music and you have your own voice. I mean, New York is great for that because there are so many great musicians. You can't really do everything. You can't really do everything. And I have an issue with that. Definitely as being a sideman, because I was always like, well, I want to be doing this, I want to be doing that, should be doing that, and it wasn't really always necessarily the music I wanted to be playing. It was just like the gig with the best, the most in-trend musician right now, or blah blah. I want to be able to do, and although that's good to want to work and play with different people, but it wasn't always driven by the music, and it wasn't driven by even financial. It was just like I wanted to be. I wanted to be respected by the cool people. So now, getting over that sort of thing and thinking more about just the music, who do I really want to play with, or I need to make some money, because I have family, blah blah blah. But so that's definitely a good thing to be aware of. But with bass players, it's hard because you're a chameleon, you're playing with different people, and you can adapt to a lot of situations. So.
Double bass is a very big instrument and difficult to play. Have you had any injuries with your hands?
No, luckily not yet. I'm touch wood. My mother was a cellist, so she sort of always mentioned being relaxed and limb loose and excuse me. So luckily nothing. My hands get a bit stiff now after playing. Playing in New York, sometimes you play a long. I haven't done it for a while, but I remember playing some sets like 2 hours long, or just like, gigs that had 6 sets, and you just really play a lot. But luckily nothing serious. Some other, some guys, not too many bass players, drummers have the problems.
And what advice would you give to, your bass students? Go, guys. Prevent, don't do this to prevent any injuries. So what would you say?
Yeah, specific things, but just don't have your thumb too tense on the neck, or don't have all this movement here. Don't be stiff here. Be relaxed and loosen up before you play. Stretch your hands. Breathe when you play. When you're playing faster, practice breathing. Breathing out, relaxing, have good posture, check out the classical method books, the classical ways. It's years and years of study and just figuring out how to play with the economical movement. So that's what I would say. That's what I say to my bass students. I try and stop them from tapping their foot too much or getting too tense and try and count in their head and just relax. And stuff like that, which maybe stuff that would tense them up. So people do all sorts of things. Someone grinds his teeth to feel tight. People. So it's just that. I mean, yeah. I've been lucky though. I've been lucky. It's a different animal. You just got to be simple with the upright bass because you just can't do the same stuff. So you just got to process that, and then not worry about the other stuff. I didn't have really bad blisters for years though, blood blisters and stuff. But I also played too hard too.
With your album Romantic Font, what software did you use for writing the music at home?
I use GarageBand actually.
Okay,
I have Logic now, but I think I basically that was all written on GarageBand, which I thought was perfectly fine. And I would send the band demos. I used to write a lot on piano, and my piano skills are sort of limited. I can play some nice harmony and some voice leading, but I always end up playing the same kind of thing. So I wrote a lot of that just on the electric bass.
Yeah.
Those kind of cool. The things are anyway, they're kind of electric bass things, and then I record them into GarageBand and just play the parts and then send the demos. And the demos were pretty good for them to get an idea. So that's how I did that, definitely. Yeah, because some of the metric modulations, I just GarageBand doesn't know how to do it, but I just did it by ear.
Okay, get that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it wasn't. now I'm actually working on a track in Logic. Like I'm working on a track, so I'm doing it more, specifically.
What is your electric bass and what is your double bass? What is the brand and how did you acquire it?
Okay, so the electric bass, I have two electric basses right now. The main one is a Moulon 5-string jazz type bass, the Moulon is a company from South Korea. He makes great sort of vintage type basses. All the guys use them, and he very generously gave me one.
Oh, that's amazing. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, I had Matt Stevens, the guitarist. He hooked me up with them, and they sent me this great. So it's a great kind of 60s style Fender jazz bass with this 5-string. Then I have a P bass, a precision bass, which is what I use on the Romantic Funk album, which is called like flat rounds, very fat, old sounding strings. And then my upright bass, actually, I have one I'm trying to sell. My main bass that I've used on a lot of albums is the big bass, the Hawks, which was a British company, Hawks, and they were big. It's a big kind of violin-shaped bass. I'm actually trying to sell it. It's got a big, low, warm sound, which is great, but it's anyway. And then I have another bass, which is like a mid-century German bass, which I'm using now, which is kind of more punchy, a bit smaller. Yeah.
And what amplifier do you have?
At the moment, I have an Aguilar head that it's for the electric, though, for the upright, but then I don't really need. I use it at the 55, but generally wherever I go on tour and everything, there's obviously amps there.
Okay. So when you're setting yourself up, what is it that you're looking for? Let's say with the mids and trebles and the basses, the EQ, pretty much. What kind of sound do you like?
Yeah, well, if it's an upright bass.
Oh no, for electric bass.
Electric, oof! I just put everything down the middle. And the Aguilar's great because it's like it's kind of got a growly thing I like too, but everything down the middle really even. But generally I like it. I have a bassy bass sound. There's a lot of bass.
You got a lot of bottom to it. Yeah.
Not low end. It's not thin sound. It's more low end. That's what I'm looking for.
What is that working artists should avoid doing and stay away from?
Just stay away from negativity.
Okay.
Stay away from, complaining about other people's music. Stay away from that kind of rabbit hole of, negativity about other music and negativity and sort of jealousy. That's what I mean. And then business related, don't stay away from shitty people. I don't know. About teaching, it's like you've got to hear something from the person that you respect, or it's like someone else, because even if it's the same thing your teacher's been telling you. Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why people say, oh, you should do a book or something, because that even though you might be saying the same thing, that person's like, they might oh, if he does it, then
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be looking forward to it. I'll watch out for it.
Yeah, I'll be a lot on the triplet. And, I have a big, coming from, sorry, this is off the, but definitely having an experience of coming from Europe and dealing, and then coming to the States and just knowing how, generalizing, musicians in Europe don't really deal with rhythm in the same way, the same depth that they do in the States. And there's many factors for that, cultural and everything, but also just understanding the triplet, the role the triplet plays in the jazz. That's going to be one big thing in the book, just to get you comfortable with feeling the triplet and feeling the rhythms, just the basic ones, but just absorbing them and just having a really good foundation to be able to take take the rhythm from there. Because I feel maybe it's probably a lot better than when I was in the UK, and I know everything's got better, but I still think there's a lot of musicians just not dealing with it and floating. Sometimes sometimes it works, but if I'm focusing on bass players and people who want to be sidemen, they need to have that kind. And most of my students that I get. I mean, it's like they want to learn the stuff and then they don't have a sound together. Most of them, I don't have to do anything. I say, well, let's just work on your sounds, because it's not there. Or just work on your chord note field. It's not there.
Mm.
And they're like, how do you play this with Ari Honig? How do you do, or how do you do, just get your, it's this usual stuff, fundamental, But yeah, you're right. It's hearing it right from the right person is really cool.
So I will keep in touch, and good night.
All right, good night, Peter. Have a good night.